What if I told you that the war in Ukraine might not be the most dangerous front between Russia and the West? What if the real battlefield lies hidden beneath the Baltic Sea, in a pipeline that was supposed to be dead? The Nord Stream 2 project, written off as a geopolitical corpse, is suddenly back in the headlines. And this time, it's not about Germany, Brussels, or even Washington. It's about Kaliningrad. Yes, that small Russian exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, cut off from the rest of Russia, might soon become the center of a new global energy game. And if Moscow pulls this off, Europe's fragile unity could collapse like a house of cards. So let's unpack this. Nord Stream 2 was once Europe's most controversial energy project. Designed to double the flow of natural gas from Russia directly into Germany, it bypassed Ukraine and gave Moscow enormous leverage over Europe's energy future. Then came the war. Sabotage, sanctions, and political outrage seemed to bury the pipeline forever. But here's what they don't tell you. Russia never fully gave up on Nord Stream 2. In fact, discussions inside the Russian Duma are now exploring a radical idea, redirecting one of its surviving lines not to Germany, but to Kaliningrad. Imagine the implications. Instead of fueling German factories, the pipeline could turn this isolated Russian territory into a brand new energy hub, a bridge to China, the BRICS nations, and even to European countries willing to break ranks with Brussels. On paper, it sounds like a technical adjustment. In reality, it's a geopolitical earthquake. Let's start with the European reaction. Brussels was blindsided. For years, EU leaders insisted Nord Stream 2 was finished, politically toxic, impossible to revive. Yet, as whispers emerged about technical work resuming on one of the lines, panic spread across European capitals. Hawks like Poland, the Baltic states, and the Czech Republic immediately accused Moscow of weaponizing energy once again. They demanded total isolation from Russian gas, even at the cost of economic pain. But others were not so quick to dismiss the idea. Germany, Austria, and Hungary, three countries deeply dependent on cheap energy, saw the possibility of a temporary lifeline. German industrial associations warned that without affordable gas, factories would shut down, jobs would vanish, and Europe's economic engine could grind to a halt. Austrian officials quietly echoed those concerns. And Hungary? Prime Minister Viktor Orban has never hidden his pragmatism. For him, sanctions are secondary. Keeping Hungarian households warm and industries alive comes first. While Europe argued among itself, Moscow turned up the pressure. Kremlin officials hinted that gas could start flowing again, if Europe showed flexibility on sanctions. It wasn't a formal offer, but the message was clear: play ball or freeze. Washington, of course, wasn't amused. The White House immediately warned of new sanctions, threatening European companies tempted to cooperate. For the US, Nord Stream 2's resurrection would be a direct blow to Western unity. And then came the German dilemma. Berlin, the continent's biggest economy, was stuck in the middle. German businesses begged for a deal to avoid collapse, while the Green Party and a large portion of society rejected any return to Russian energy. The divide was so sharp that it threatened to split German politics itself. The European Union tried to mediate, holding an emergency summit. The result? A vague compromise, no large-scale return to Russian gas, but limited talks for short-term emergency supplies. But Russia didn't wait. Weeks later, Moscow announced its trump card. Instead of begging Europe to reopen Nord Stream 2, it would redirect the infrastructure to Kaliningrad. Overnight, hopes of cheap gas for Germany were buried. Berlin was left scrambling, its economy sliding deeper into crisis. German media declared it the funeral of industrial stability. Giants of steel, chemicals, and manufacturing began moving production abroad. Unemployment surged, street protests multiplied, radical parties gained ground. Meanwhile, Russia poured money into Kaliningrad, transforming it from a military outpost into a new energy hub. With Chinese investment and support from BRICS partners, the exclave began building terminals and infrastructure to re-export gas. Europe watched in disbelief as Moscow turned its supposed weakness into a new strength. Even more ironic, Germany was forced to buy small amounts of Russian gas anyway, through intermediaries and in the form of liquefied natural gas at far higher prices. What had been sold as a victory for European independence turned into a humiliating defeat. And this is where Hungary re-enters the story. Imagine if Budapest openly buys gas from Kaliningrad. One EU member breaking ranks would be enough to expose the cracks in Brussels' sanctions regime. Orban has every incentive to do it. Cheap gas, domestic stability, and a stronger bargaining position inside the EU. For Russia, this would be a masterstroke. By supplying Hungary, it wouldn't just sell energy, it would export division, showing that Europe's so-called unity is a fragile illusion. This isn't just speculation. As far back as September 2022, reports surfaced of Duma members openly suggesting Nord Stream 2 could be redirected to Kaliningrad. They argued the exclave should no longer rely on hostile Baltic states for transit. Russia's plan was clear even then. If Germany slammed the door, Kaliningrad would become the alternative. Today, that plan looks closer to reality than ever. Let's not forget how dangerous this is. Kaliningrad isn't just any territory. It's one of the most militarized regions in Europe, bristling with Russian missiles and nuclear-capable systems. A US general once floated the idea of seizing Kaliningrad by land, only to be met with immediate threats from Moscow. Touch it, and you'll unleash nuclear retaliation. Now imagine combining that military arsenal with control of a new energy hub. Kaliningrad would become untouchable, a fortress of both weapons and pipelines. And Germany, the consequences are catastrophic. Its industrial base was built on cheap Russian gas. Without it, production costs soar, competitiveness collapses, and jobs evaporate. What follows is social unrest, protests, strikes, polarization, and the rise of extremist politics. A once stable country could descend into decades of turmoil. Meanwhile, the United States profits by selling liquefied gas to Europe at 3 times the price. But let's be honest, this is not a sustainable solution. European households and businesses cannot shoulder those costs forever. The more expensive energy becomes, the more pressure builds from within to break with Washington's strategy and seek alternatives, even if that means turning back to Moscow. So here's the big picture. Nord Stream 2 is no longer about Germany or even Europe's energy needs. It's a symbol of the new world order taking shape. Russia is saying, we don't need Europe. We can redirect our pipelines, find new partners, and still hold influence inside the EU through pragmatists like Hungary. Europe, in turn, is learning the hard way that security isn't just about armies or alliances. It's about keeping the lights on, the heat running, and factories producing. The lesson is brutal but simple. Europe thought it could dictate terms to Russia. Now Russia dictates terms to Europe. And in Berlin and Brussels, that realization has come far too late. So what does this all mean for the future? If Kaliningrad truly becomes an energy hub, Russia gains a permanent card to play not only in Europe but globally. China and the BRICS will benefit. Hungary may defy Brussels, and Germany could face the most painful deindustrialization in modern history. And all of this triggered not by tanks or missiles, but by a pipeline that everyone thought was dead. The real war, it seems, isn't fought on the battlefield. It's fought in boardrooms, in parliaments, and under the Baltic Sea. So let me ask you, do you think Europe can survive without Russian gas? Or will pragmatism eventually break through the political walls of Brussels? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. And if you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join me next time as we keep uncovering the truths the mainstream media won't tell you. Stay strong, stay curious, and above all, stay awake to the real battles shaping our world.